So, Sumeru's Archon quest has officially come to a close as of patch 3.2. We've successfully rescued our cute radish Archon, overturned a corrupt political system, concluded a conflict 2 years in the making, given the people of Sumeru the ability to dream again, and quite literally saved the entirety of Teyvat in the process. So now that we've finally done all that, there's only one thing to ask. Where do we go from here? Well, what if I told you that there's a very real possibility we might actually get our first look at Celestia and the Heavenly Principles since the very beginning of the game? That Dotore's shenanigans in Sumeru are far from over, and that we may even have to team up with a certain wanderer to put a stop to him before he recklessly unleashes divine judgment on the innocent people of Sumeru. Now that would truly be something to look forward to, wouldn't it? So, why and how might this happen? Well, near the end of the Archon quest, there's a very interesting conversation that takes place between Nahida and Dotore. In a nutshell, Dotore is trying to get the Gnosis from Nahida, as all Harbingers tend to want to do, and Nahida just isn't having it. This leads to a back and forth between them before she eventually threatens Dotore by asking him if he thinks her destroying the Gnosis right then and there could awaken the Heavenly Principles, and if so, how do the Fatui plan on dealing with the consequences? Upon hearing this, Dotore seems surprised at this more than anything, but after thinking it over for a bit, he gives in, stating that as a scholar he can't ignore the possibility of this happening, and he agrees to make a deal with Nahida for the Gnosis in exchange for deleting his other segments. So why is this important? Well, do you remember that teaser that Hoyoverse published a little while ago? You know, the one where they showed off all the Harbingers? The title of the video states it's a teaser for a Teyvat chapter interlude. In other words, a main story chapter that takes place in between the main Archon quests, such as Shenhe's introductory quest and the 2.7 quest in the Chasm. I believe the next interlude we're getting is the one teased in this video, and that this is what the events of the next update will be focusing on. So a lot of things are shown in this video, but I want to focus on one specific part of it. That being the conversation between Dotore and who we can assume to be Columbina near the end of it, as well as the scene right after that. So the scene goes something like this. So in this scene, Columbina asks Dotore where the segment in the prime of his life is. I believe this is referring to the segment that talks to Nahida at the end of the 3.2 Archon quest. The reason why is because that segment refers to itself as the most selfish version of Dotore, which would make sense for someone in his prime. Also, given what happens to the other segments, I think drawing special attention to this one in this conversation means it is most likely the one that survives. After Columbina asks this, Dotore responds by saying that the segment is busy with a little experiment in blasphemy, after which there's a cut to a scene of the segment burning what looks to be an Irminsul tree before cutting again to reveal that this was a dream Collei was having. This image of an Irminsul tree on fire is something that was also shown in the promotional animation for Sumeru, but confusingly never actually showed up in the Archon quest itself. I believe the reason why is because this is what will happen in the so-called Teyvat chapter interlude the teaser is for, and this could be showing the segment of Dotore burning the tree in an attempt to awaken the Heavenly Principles, or otherwise causing some destruction to their laws and control over Teyvat. Now, I do have to point out there are some potential problems with this theory. For starters, there are a lot of things that suggest the events of this teaser happen before the events of the Sumeru Archon quest. For example, earlier in the teaser, Capitano asked Dotore where Scaramouche and the Gnosis are, which means this part has to be taking place before the end of the Archon quest, since Dotore already secured the Gnosis at that point and Scaramouche was out of commission. Also, Dotore deleted all his other segments at the end of the Archon quest, so how could he be referring to one in his conversation with Columbina then? Well, in regard to the conversation with Capitano, one explanation is that not everything shown in this teaser is happening at the same time. I believe everything up until the end of the video is taking place during the events of the Sumeru Archon quest, while the scene at the end of the teaser is what will happen in the next update. During the 3.2 Archon quest, Dotore tells Tignari that he has to leave Sumeru right away since the Tsaritsa has called him to return back. This could be in reference to the meeting of the Harbingers we see in the teaser, considering that we know this segment did actually leave Sumeru at that time. If this is true, it would make sense as to why Capitano asked Dotore how things were going with Scaramouche, since he would have just come back from Sumeru. As for the conversation with Columbina, this could actually be the real Dotore talking to her, which could explain his frustration at her comment of him looking young today, although I do admit this one is a bit of a stretch. Another thing to note is that the video description does mention that it has been a long time since Kalei has last dreamed, and considering that the people of Sumeru just regained the ability to dream at the end of the Archon quest, this could suggest the scene does actually take place after it. Another potential problem with this theory is the why. Why would Dottore want to wake up the Heavenly Principles in the first place? And for that matter, why would he need to burn down an Irminsul tree to do so? He already has the Gnosis, and considering he took Nahida's deal, he's probably somewhat wary of facing the Heavenly Principles head-on. The Fatui might not even possess the strength to directly confront them yet, so why would he do something so unnecessarily risky? Well, one thing we have to understand about Dottore is that he doesn't really seem to be all that concerned about the consequences of his actions, so long as he learns something useful from them. As he says to Nahida, that sort of thing is for the hypothetical him in the future to deal with. As for why he would need to burn down an Irminsul tree, as I said before, Nahida mentioned that destroying the Gnosis, a symbol of the Heavenly Principles' control over Teyvat, could cause damage to their laws and therefore trigger their awakening. But there's a problem with this. As far as we know, the Fatui need the Gnosis for whatever it is they're planning, so they can't exactly destroy any of them to test this theory. However, destroying an Irminsul tree could be a good substitute. And finally, the last thing I want to mention for this theory is of course the sad, soon-to-be Animo Fandango boy himself. So, what do we know about Scaramouche's status at the end of the Archon quest? Well, we know he's in a coma and being watched over by Nahida, we know he's going to be one of the next playable units in the game, and we know he's going to be rocking a fresh new outfit with an Animo Vision to go along with it. Considering he's becoming playable, that means he's probably going to get some sort of story-related quest, which I think will most likely come in the form of the interlude chapter itself, as was the case with Shunha. Personally, I feel the Traveler's relationship with Scaramouche moving forward will be a lot like their relationship with Childe. They're not quite enemies, but they're also not quite allies, and if the situation calls for it, they might even find themselves teaming up to take on a mutual threat. I feel like this would suit his character much more than just a straight-up redemption arc. In order to get to that point though, I feel like there needs to be something to bring them together initially. The fact that he has a vision means he must have found some sort of ambition to strive for, and Dottore threatening the safety of all of Sumeru and especially Nahida, who went out of her way to look after him, might just be the right event to trigger that. In fact, considering an ambition is a sort of dream, I think it would make a lot of sense for the God of Dreams herself to be the one to help him find his. So, to sum it all up, I think the next update will give us a new chapter interlude. I think that Dottore will try to stir up the Heavenly Principles by destroying one of the Irminsul trees, and I think Scaramouche will team up with the Traveler in an attempt to stop him before it's too late, and maybe this will lead to him attaining his own ambition and grant him a shiny new Animo Vision in the process. But then again, I could also be completely wrong about all of this. Regardless, I hope you all enjoyed this somewhat rambly speculation video. Do let me know what you thought of it and what you think might happen in the next patch. I'd love to hear all your thoughts and theories down below. I do plan on making a lot more videos on Genshin as well, so if you're interested in that, feel free to stick around and subscribe. I wish you all great luck in the gacha, and I'll see you all next time.